I've been negative. I don't want to be negative anymore. Makes me ugly. Now I want to be positive. I'm going to tell you guys how I've done what I've done in Texas, and y'all just do it in your state, okay? It's not proprietary. You don't have to sign up for me to give you this information, but it's easier for you to find this information that I'm providing if you sign up, but you don't have to. You don't have to give me money, though I'd really appreciate it. The way that we've put our poll watchers training together is relatively simple in concept. If you read the national constitution, it will cover how some of our elections are to be sort of like delegated out to the states. It's incumbent upon the states to set their own election laws, and if Congress decides that they're going to regulate a certain aspect of it, then that's incumbent upon the states to figure out how they're going to meet those requirements or regulations, whatever. So that's part of our training. That's the first part, is the national constitution, and that applies to every state. The next part is going to be reading your state constitution and finding your state constitution's article on suffrage. Suffrage is, I know a lot of people know this, and I'm not trying to be demeaning, but suffrage means voting rights. Suffrage is voting. I'm really not trying to be demeaning with that. Some people don't make that connection because we don't use the term suffrage very often anymore. So they might see that and not make the connection, oh, that's voting. So suffrage is voting. Okay? Find your state's article on suffrage and read it. Whatever it says, hopefully it's good, hopefully it's strong. Ours in Texas is very strong. Our suffrage clause is very strong. So find that, read it. See what it says about your elections. Then you're going to need to go to the actual codes or statutes. In Texas, they're called codes, election codes, but they're found inside the Texas statutes, which is a even further breakdown of our state constitution. Remember, though, there's only one law of the land, and it's the Constitution's state and national, and they match. So there's one law of the land. The statutes and codes are drafted, and they're supposed to adhere to the Constitution's state and national. If a statute or a code or some piece of legislation at the state level or in the congressional level is drafted and passed, and it turns out later that in effect it violates or opposes the constitutions, then it's no longer law. It's considered null and void because we don't follow unjust laws, right? Raise your hand if you follow unjust laws. No, put your hand down. We don't follow them. Put your hand down. We have a duty not to follow unjust laws. And you know that. I'm just joking. I didn't think anybody raised their hand. I'm just joking. I'm just joking around. Just being silly. Okay. Once you determine... Now, in other states, they're called something else. They might not be called codes in your state. They might be called something else. So, you're going to have to find those. Now, in Texas, we've got a few layers of breakdown of the law. We've got the statutes, we've got the codes, then we have rules, right, that are set by the Secretary of State, and then we have advisory, okay, or advisory codes. Now, the advisory codes are like some of the lowest level of suggestion. Hang on, my graphic's about to go out. I gotta fix that timing on my computer. The advisories and the rules are issued by the Secretary of State's office, and they don't have the authority to circumvent the congressionally drafted and passed election codes, okay? But they can advise on how to adhere to those election codes if they feel like it. Oops, I spit. So remember that too. Remember, it's constitutions, state and national, then it's the statutes, then it's the election codes, then it's the rules that are set out by the Secretary of State's office, which rules are like almost equivalent to codes, but they're not congressionally drafted or passed, so they're really not. And then there's advisory, which is advice. Look at all of those and see if you're seeing. Try to determine if your state is operating or running their elections based on election codes, or if they're doing it based on the lowest level of advisory codes possible. Okay? What the Wisconsin County Sheriff rightly called suspect legal opinions. Try to determine if your elections are being managed and administered according to suspect legal opinions, as opposed to the election codes, which are drafted, debated, and passed by your state legislature as constitutionally ordained by the national constitution. Pay special attention to these items, okay? Pay special attention to the registration. Here I gotta point something else out. The election codes are effectively law if they adhere to the state constitution's article on suffrage. If they don't, they're null and void. You don't follow them, right? Okay, that's what I meant to say. So the election codes are effectively law if they're constitutional. Yep. So, wardrobe change. Okay. So pay special attention to these topics. Ooh, my wax melter's freaking out over there. The registration codes. How are people supposed to be registered? How are they supposed to, what's the process of them getting registered? Okay. If you find, if you have a list of suspicious registrations, open records request their registration application forms. Some of them will be on paper. Some of them will be digital because people will re-register when they go and renew their license at the DMV or the DPS, wherever y'all do that. So some of them will be digital, okay? Now in Texas, and I feel certain that this is the case with other states, but I don't know. In Texas, you have to live in county and you have to have an in-county residential address on your registration application form. Typically, it's the address that's on your driver's license or your ID. So check on that. Check on duplicate registrations, all kinds of stuff like that. But if you really want to prove that somebody was unlawfully registered, okay, one of the first steps is open records requesting their voter registration application form. If it's digital, they'll give you a printout of what looks like a screenshot of a digital thing. The next one is, this seems to be an epidemic nationwide, the community-wide polling centers, okay? It would seem as though the National Association of Secretaries of State has really, they've really talked themselves out of following the law, this one particular law, that we are typically required to vote in precinct, okay? That really helps with our records. If your Secretary of State has opted out of that and has opted into the something called the community-wide polling place program, that's bad for your records, really bad. And that means anybody can vote anywhere in the county. They don't have to be in precinct, and they sell it to us as a matter of convenience. However, it renders our elections unauditable because you can't even audit just one precinct without touching all of those ballots from every single polling location in order to go and pull the ballots from just one precinct. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. You might as well audit the whole county if you're just trying to audit one precinct. And we know how much of an uphill battle that is. So you can't even audit one precinct. It's like not feasible. Look and see if you have any codes related to ballot numbering. That'll be under the preparation of your ballots, how your ballots are to be prepared, if you have a code for that. We have a code for that in Texas. Not all states will have the same codes. That's just how shit is sometimes. Early voting. Check out your early voting laws. Read about that, because if your state's early voting laws are similar to Texas, then early voting is run completely different than election day. And election laws pretty much don't apply to early voting. That's what we have here in Texas. Our election laws pretty much don't apply to early voting. They're super ad hoc. They just do whatever the fuck they want. Very wheels off. Check on that. I mean, ours are so wheels off that our county elections know this. And they don't even have the same teams working early voting and election day. They don't even have the same people. It's like they don't want them both working early voting and election day because the discrepancies will be too, they'll be too blatant. They'll be like, people will be like, How come on election day we do it like this, but during early voting we don't give a fuck about doing that? How come on election day it's the law to do this, but during early voting the law doesn't fucking apply? Mail-in ballots. Check the process for getting a mail-in ballot. See about your election code for that. I don't know if that'll be an election code or an advisory code, but check on that. Oh, record production. The result tapes from the scanner tabulators by location, okay? You need those printed at the end of early voting. Demand it, okay? They're not producing those. I don't imagine that it's limited to Texas, because it's not limited to one county here in Texas. This is a lot of counties struggling with the fact that our elections administrators are straight up refusing to produce the result tapes by polling location through early voting. They're just never produced. We just have to trust the digitally compiled results that they're now offering to us, which they didn't before. They didn't even used to compile the results, early vote results by polling location. What they were doing was, we're voting by polling location. We're not voting in precinct anymore, right? But somehow those precinct cumulative reports are being reallocated. Those precinct cumulative reports are taking polling center data where everybody in all kinds of precincts are voting there, and then they are reallocating them back out to the right precincts, and we're supposed to trust that. Okay, and that's how we're getting our precinct cumulative reports. It's not based on an actual precinct count. It's not. So check those.